Sean Mucker in the building. What up, Sean?
What's going on?
And I have my girl T. Marie.
What's up?
We have a very, very interesting show for you guys today. For the people that have been following, and I don't know who hasn't been following closely, but for the people who've been following closely to the Breonna Taylor case, in the studios today we have the president of Louisville Metro Council, David James. We also have joining us will be one of the attorneys for the family of Breonna Taylor, which is Sam Aguiar, and we have, I always get her name wrong. Is it Couture Heron?
Couture Heron.
Couture Heron, which is one of the organizers, I believe, of the Breonna's Law that passed here recently. So let's get into the show, people, and hopefully our other guests will come into the studio soon. You want to talk on Mr. James, please. We will begin with Metro Council David James. How you doing, Mr. James?
I am well, sir. I am well.
Mr. James, you are president of Louisville Metro Council.
I am.
How long have you been president on that board?
This is my third year.
This is your third year. All right, so you have a history in law enforcement.
I do.
And can you give us a brief history on your career in law enforcement?
In '84, the Louisville Police Department back then, before it became the Metro Police Department. It was during the consent decree where the federal government had told the city of Louisville that they had been discriminating against African Americans and hiring and promotions on the Louisville Police Department. At the time I was a senior at the University of Louisville. So when I joined the Louisville Police Department, it wasn't a good time for blacks to be joining the police department because, days I'd come into my locker room and there'd be, a card on my locker that said, "N-word, we don't want you here," and those kinds of things. So it was a hard time.
I don't even think many of us were aware of that. So back in 2003, was the federal government that
1984.
84?
Yeah.
84. So in 84, there weren't a lot of black officers on the local police department.
Absolutely not.
Wow. I don't think we're all aware of that.
Yeah.
So how were those times?
They were rough. There were locker room fights. There were parking lot fights. There were arguments about blacks being a part of the police department. It wasn't easy. And so things changed over a period of time. Eventually, I went to work in the narcotics unit, stayed there for about 13 years, served on the SWAT team. And then right after the merger, I left and went to become the Commissioner of Investigations at the Attorney General's office. Left there when Greg Stumble left there and went to be the operations manager at the Louisville Police. Quit there in 2016, I think.
So you have experience at the Attorney General's office, which will play big into this conversation. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes of what people want to understand.
Exactly.
Okay, so I've been following this case closely, and a lot of people are there's a lot of misinformation out there.
That's correct.
And I want to start by giving some of the information I know. So the Breonna Taylor, are we good?
Let's say they can't hear you.
Well, I just turned it up.
Okay.
I think it maybe we could put a little closer to him because he has on the mask.
Cut off.
So anyway, the Breonna Taylor, are you cut us off too? All right. So the Breonna Taylor situation occurred on March 13th, 2020.
Right.
So March 13th, we have this murder that occurs. It goes quiet. It goes quiet for a while. Initially, I was reporting on this case, and it went quiet until May. I think about May 12th or May 13th of 2020, and it kind of picked up steam when the Aubrey, and then following that, the George Floyd case happened in Minneapolis. So once those two cases brought police brutality to the forefront, then these cases, the Breonna Taylor case, seemed to come to the surface. When that happened, there was outrage. And when we saw outrage, the case was immediately turned over to the FBI and the Attorney General, correct? No. Okay, go ahead.
So the case happened March 13th. If you remember, that's the same week that we were talking about canceling the NCAA and all those things due to COVID.
Right.
And so many things that would have normally risen up were eaten up by the bandwidth of COVID-19. And so once the case came through with Ahmad and all that, people were able to other cases came through that opening through COVID, I guess that's what to say that.
Correct.
And so it wasn't until this week that the complete case report was turned over to the Attorney General's office.
So why do you think it took so long for it to get there?
Ineffective leadership.
You said ineffective leadership. Do you feel like that it got swept under the rug because of the COVID, or that they was trying to cover it up?
No, I think that ineffective leadership did not put the proper resources on the case so that it could be immediately investigated. I mean, think about it. We had such poor leadership on the police department that Tavon Lee, who was the young man that was stopped on 18th Street back in 2018,
Right.
that case is still under investigation. All right? So that's ineffective leadership.
Okay, so when we're talking ineffective leadership, are we talking as high up as Greg Fisher?
Yes.
Okay, so we're saying that ineffective leadership within LMPD and the city of Louisville has led to this case being stalled.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. I'm glad you addressed that, because I've been an advocate of that since we began, and you can't blame LMPD without blaming the person that's the head of LMPD.
Exactly.
So a lot of people don't know that the chief of police is directly hired by
The mayor.
the mayor. So let me ask you a question. When the chief of police puts out a report or a summary, is that approved by the city's mayor?
No. So you're talking about the incident report?
Correct.
So what should have happened is that somebody, some lieutenant, some sergeant, some major should have looked at that before it went out and said, hey, wait a minute, that's incorrect. But that didn't happen. Again, ineffective leadership.
Okay. So what is your position on this now? Is your position that this is the question that a lot of people want to know.
Okay.
We know that the Attorney General and the FBI is overseeing the criminal part of this investigation.
Right.
However,
Well, no, that's not true.
okay, go ahead.
So the Attorney General is looking at the criminal part of the investigation for violations of criminal law as it relates to Kentucky state law. The FBI is looking at civil rights violations.
Okay. So we have the FBI looking at civil rights violations, which could possibly result in criminal charges, correct?
Yes.
And the Attorney General is looking at possible state laws that may be violated.
That's correct.
Now, being that the Attorney General and the FBI are investigating separate criminal entities of this investigation, can these officers still be fired by LAPD?
Yes.
And firing would be based on what? Policy violation?
So the mayor could fire, actually it's the chief that would do the firing, but you'd have to have the blessing of the mayor. So they could be fired at any time.
So they can be fired at any time. If they can be fired at any time, based on what? What? Because we hear, the reason I'm asking is because we've heard this 67C. We've heard that there's a contract that's supposed to be ironclad between the FOP and LMPD that says that an officer cannot be fired while under current investigation. Is that true or not true?
It's kind of true.
Okay.
Right? So we regularly, as in the city, are accused of wrongful termination, and those lawsuits happen regularly. It's not.
So it's nothing uncommon.
Not like it's uncommon. There are constantly grievances because the city's violated, some labor agreement. That is a regular thing. The city intentionally violates labor agreements on a regular basis.
Okay, so this is nothing new.
Right.
So some of the fears I've heard from some of my followers and some of the listeners are that if these officers were fired, which may violate the terms of their contract, that a wrongful termination lawsuit can be filed, they can earn millions of dollars, and they cannot be prosecuted criminally. Can you address that?
They would not get millions of dollars. They'd get back paid for what they missed out on while they were not working, right? And so what the real deal is that the contract, the law, just gives the officer a recourse if that is violated.
So if the officers are fired, they have a recourse to
Try to get their job back.
to get their job back and to be compensated for wages they may have missed during the time that they
That is
were
correct.
terminated. Okay, so moving forward, someone like me, I would be asking, and I asked Sam this as well. Policy violations. When we look at policy violations, we've looked at. Well, let me get into this first. We've come across an area of the contract that, when I read it, it kind of deemed that if an officer, if an accusation is raised on an officer, and the chief of police doesn't move forward within that accusation within 90 days, that accusation is no longer part of the permanent record. Is that true?
I couldn't say that.
Okay. So from there, can officers be, if an officer committed a policy violation, and we saw when Hankinson was fired yesterday, in that termination letter it said use of deadly force, 10 counts of use of deadly force. So apparently this was, I guess, against policy violation as far as the way they handle shootings.
So just to be clear, there's a state law that says I can't talk about that particular incident.
Okay.
So I let.
Okay.
There's no state law that says I can't talk about that.
Well, speak on it, Sam.
No, I'm gonna get to that. But what you're saying is that at any time, Mayor Fisher can. Now his chief has to be the one that actually do the fire, correct?
Correct.
So Mayor Fisher can't officially fire one himself, but he can have the chief of police fire
Recommendate.
these officers based on certain violations.
That's correct.
And if they're fired, they have recourse in filing a wrongful termination suit that will give them back wages if, and that's a big if the appeal is ruled in their favor.
That's correct.
Because there's also a possibility of the appeal being ruled against them, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, because they get merit board within 60 days, right? And that's public, right? So if Hankinson wants to challenge this within 60 days, we get a public hearing, right?
Right.
So wrongful termination,
Well, I'll take that.
so wrongful terminations are not foreign to the city of Louisville.
No, you're not.
Okay. A lot of people, I think a lot of people have a misunderstanding about how that works. Now, for myself, I feel that, and I know you can't speak on a lot, but I feel that this case, this murder happened, I call it murder, but this death occurred on March 12th. It went,
13th.
March 13th. It went silent for months. My blame has been at Mayor Fisher
It should be.
because I think when I looked, it was March 12th, or May 12th, somewhere in May, the case was turned over to the Attorney General on the basis of Tom Wine was currently prosecuting Kenneth Walker, and there would have been a conflict of interest if he attempted to investigate the Breonna Taylor case.
The jurisdiction of the case was turned over to the Attorney General, not the case itself.
So the jurisdiction was turned over. So meaning the investigation
Yes.
is turned over. Okay. That's problematic. Because I would think that these officers would have been the investigation would have began back in March.
Yes.
Or at least if there was a conflict of interest there, it would have been recognized early and turned over to the Attorney General or an outside prosecutor earlier than May. That goes all the way up to Mayor Fisher.
Exactly.
Okay. As long as we have that understanding.
Can I ask David a question?
Go ahead. I'm gonna bring this over there.
David knows he's going to get questions from two sides. But,
But before you start, let me introduce. This is Sam Aguilar. Am I saying your name correctly?
yeah.
Sam Aguilar. He is one of the attorneys for the family of Breonna Taylor. All right. Now, Sam, let's go in.
Well, hold on real quick. What is Harris Transportation?
What is Harris Transportation?
Yeah. There's a Harris Transportation in this building. Is that you?
No, it's not me.
Okay.
No.
I'm sitting there wondering, I'm calling y'all and somebody downtown said I could walk up here and I'm hustling and
I
bustling.
see you sweating, man. Where'd you
And
walk from?
Dude, I came from right in front of the square. So I was down there and they were like, oh, you can just walk up there. And then all of a sudden Sean
From
called.
6th and Jefferson?
Hell yeah, 6th and Jefferson. So all of a sudden I'm running like I haven't run in years. And then I walk in here and I already told them, and I say, man, they got a transportation company. They could have just sent me down and picked me up.
No. When I send out the address, I usually put in parentheses 4th and Oak. So apparently that wasn't done.
Usually what I do in the era of iPhones is actually put it in and look at it. We've come
I did put 1151 South on South 4th Street, but my apologies.
But
all on me.
Okay, go ahead. So you are the one of the attorneys representing the family.
That's right.
Okay, so throughout your personal investigation, you've ran into several roadblocks,
It's tough.
and these roadblocks are coming from LMPD and the mayor's office.
It's tough. And yeah, it's come from LMPD and the mayor's office.
All right, so I'm gonna let you speak on it, man. Go
Well,
ahead.
hold on. First, I gotta ask my question.
Okay.
So before I lose my train of thought, I've got you know, I looked at Chief Schroeder's letter yesterday. It was powerful. You know, the thing that struck me, that maybe didn't strike everybody else, is that it says that he started looking at the PIU investigative file, I want to say 2 or 3 days ago. It was the 16th, I think, is what it says at the top. I don't hold him, I mean, he gets the PIU file, and when he gets it, he's only been in for a few weeks. But from your course of dealing with an LMPD, could Conrad and Fisher start a deep dive and brief into this file, you know, early on and start learning some details and getting some facts, or is that normal just to just wait several months and then finally have the file turned over?
Ineffective leadership.
I thought so too. I just wanted to ask. So anyways, Brad, let's roll.
Let's go. Let's go. We got it. I mean,
Okay, so from where you stand, you have experienced some roadblocks from LMPD in the mayor's office. Can you speak on some of those roadblocks?
Yeah, I mean, it's day one, so you know.
Wait.
My most important role in a case, Brad, and my favorite thing about a case is discovery and learning everything. And from the day that we met with Tanika Palmer, you know, Lenita has been by her side, and they've just developed this incredible bond. Ben Crump, when he joined our team, has just been an incredible national voice. My job is to find her the truth. And I gave her my word that I would do everything in my damn power to find her the truth. And that starts from day one. So from day one, we're not in court, so we got open records requests. Apply. We started sending out open records requests right away. And every single one of them except one was denied. And when that happens, you got to either go to the Attorney General's office or you got to go to circuit court. So we go to the Attorney General's office to try to appeal. We've got a few things in. Finally, we're not getting enough information, so we got to file suit. So we need to file a lawsuit, otherwise evidence is going to get destroyed, and we can't get any information. So we shoot out the subpoenas because we got subpoena power, and subpoenas, you know, LMPD is a non-party, so we can go ahead and try to get information from them. Certainly, Brad, we get it. There's certain things that the feds and the AG's office need to hold close to their chest right now and can't even give to us.
correct.
You know, they've got an investigation. It can't be compromised, but there is a rule in civil litigation where we can get a protective order. Protective order basically means that we agree to hold this confidential. You agree to give it to us, and essentially, if we want to release this going forward, we got to get the court's permission to do it.
Okay.
And what that allows us to do is we got a civil case. We got different causes of action. We got, you know, evidence that could be destroyed, especially cell phone data, iPhones. After 31 days, things start falling off of it. To this day, I don't know if our request was honored to make sure that the officer's cell phones were imaged, you know, kind of cloned, you know what I mean? So
right.
We don't know to this day. We don't have the autopsy. That subpoena was literally, like last Friday was the deadline to comply with the subpoena. And instead of, we reach out to the medical examiner's office, so like, oh yeah, we got the subpoena, we know that today's the deadline. The city said just to send it to the lawyer for the officers, not to you. And that's crazy. Like, that is absolutely crazy.
Would that be considered obstruction of justice?
Well, I think to us watching like TV and stuff, we'd say hell yeah. But right now I've got a hearing on it,
Right.
so ultimately, what the judge says goes. But our position certainly is, you have rights to object to a subpoena. You have to move to quash it. You have to, you know, tender a written objection. Neither of those took place.
Okay.
And literally, it's even worse when you honor the subpoena and send the documentation to
See,
the party
that's what I was saying.
that didn't subpoena it, and then that party doesn't send it to you. That's, to us, that's just crazy.
And withholding information, correct?
Yeah, I mean, how long in Atlanta did it take? I think we had an autopsy in a day. I think with George Floyd, we had an autopsy soon
A
enough.
couple of weeks, yeah.
And then Crump went and got his own independent one.
Right.
You know, Arbery's came out quickly. And
So the only one that has not been released is Brianna's.
yeah, what a lot of people don't realize is that the Merit Board is actually the custodian of the real true personnel files for the officers. So we sent a subpoena to them. Same exact response. Oh, we went ahead and sent it to the officers' lawyers. We're not sending it to you.
Wow.
It's like, that shit's crazy. You know, like it's what does releasing an officer's personnel files do to compromise the integrity of a criminal investigation? I haven't seen that argument yet, and I don't foresee that argument coming out. But the problem I have is, Brad, you've been here, I've been here, David's been here. I'm so sick and tired of that coined phrase, transparency and accountability, because that is not transparent. I'd go so far to say that out of all the cities right now dealing with these officer-involved shootings, dealing with these tragedies, and dealing with trying to get information from government, that we've been the least transparent. I think that we have shown that right now we are a model for what needs to change, and that's a shame. It sucks.
And we say we, you mean the city of Louisville.
Well, I mean the mayor's office.
The mayor's office. Okay, and look,
And LMPD.
And look, rightfully so. The mayor's office, the mayor himself has gotten a lot of heat from a lot of people in the city, from you, from myself as well. And it just goes back to the old saying that the buck stops here. If you are the head of a particular unit, then the fault falls on you. And we've heard the mayor spin incorrect information every time he does a press conference. Every time he does a press conference, he says, based on 67C, these officers cannot be fired. Everyone in this room knows that is not true. These officers can be, as we saw an officer be fired yesterday.
Well, don't forget, 2 days ago, it was a damn memo of understanding that nobody knew existed, that all of a sudden a lawyer's sending out saying, oh, by the way, there's this little side agreement between the county attorney's office and the mayor's office and the police department that says that we interpret the statute this way, which is not the way the statute is interpreted. So, and that email went so far to say is, right now, we don't have any facts that could potentially support terminating these officers. And then the next day,
They terminated an officer.
so keep your damn story straight,
That's what I was about to ask. Being that he got terminated yesterday, but the facts remain that the same information was already there.
It was been available.
Yeah,
it's been available.
Why was he fired prior to that?
Look at the reasons. Literally, it would have been one thing if it's throughout the course of this investigation. We've looked at this and looked at that and discovered this. That day, come on now, PIU's out on the scene a couple hours after the shooting. They know that Officer Hankison fired recklessly. Otherwise, you're blind. Look, come on. I mean, that apartment was what it was. It was it was a war zone. They knew that there were bullet holes that went into the place next door. You know what else they knew? They knew that he left the scene of the shooting. And I'm so tired of them trying to sweep this under the rug. If you want to talk about an egregious policy violation, you're an officer, you're involved in a shooting, and then you go AWOL, come on.
Okay, now let's talk about that. Okay, let's talk about in your lawsuit, you allege that well first, a lot of people want to know why Hankison was the only one fired. And I don't think a lot of people examine the lawsuit. In your lawsuit, you state that Hankison was the officer that fired recklessly.
Correct.
So was he the only officer that fired recklessly?
Right now, remember, I'm operating off of limited information.
Okay.
So that's the problem is that if I had that PIU file right now, just like if you did, if any member of the public did, we could sit here and say, they screwed up there, they messed up there, they did this here, oh, they did this okay.
Okay, not to cut you off, but for the people that don't know, a PIU file is what?
That's going to be,
That's
I
public integrity unit?
I hate it, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, internal affairs.
So it's internal
No,
affairs.
that's not true. It's not true.
Fair enough.
Speak on
Public integrity unit is the criminal investigation portion of the police department. PSU is the internal affairs of the police
I
department.
kind of lump them together. He's right.
Okay, so public integrity unit does what?
They investigate criminal activity of the police officers and city employees.
Okay, so should a PIU investigation have began on March 13th?
It did.
It did. Should the results, well, we don't know what the results are, but typically, in any other case, 3 months later, are the results of a PIU investigation, are results out within 3 months?
No.
No.
Officer involved shootings, man, I'm telling you, if you go back and look historically, there are 2017 officer involved shootings that have open PIU investigations to this day.
So
And
they're
they have
taking
no
years.
idea.
So they're taking years to come to a resolution.
Ineffective leadership.
So this all goes back to ineffective leadership, back to Mayor Fisher.
It also goes back to the whole problem behind investigating yourselves. Brad, if your mom, your dad, your cousin, somebody engages in actions today and they say, Brad, I need you to build a team of you and your family to go investigate them, and I need you to be impartial and unbiased. I'm telling you, even if you commit to being impartial and unbiased, you can't. It's just, it's inherent. So the problem here is that right now what we're seeing, the unspoken, that is pretty obvious, the feds and the AG's office got the PIU investigation, and they weren't satisfied that it was sufficient. You don't have the feds out there yesterday doing a crime scene reconstruction with high-tech equipment. You don't have the AG's office appointing special prosecutors and investigators. If they look at that PIU file and they say, wow, you guys investigated yourself pretty damn good. We're ready to go ahead and review this. They never do.
Right.
Can I ask a question? Why, when he was involved in the officer involved shooting, he's on this case. Why was he still able to still be on the merit board? Why this proceedings go on? When you think that since he's been administratively transferred that they would took him off the merit board?
Well, see, let me preface that. A lot of people don't know. What Sean is talking about is that Officer Hankinson sits on a merit board for LMPD. What this merit board does is they oversee appeals by officers that have accusations, correct? So if an officer is accused of a policy accusation, in Hankinson's case, previous accusations, he's been given a suspension. And then he appeals that suspension, and it goes to a merit board, and the merit board either upholds or rules against that particular appeal, correct?
David, jump in there. I know that he gets. I think it's hit with automatic appeal if you get over 4 days.
So let me be clear. I am not talking about a particular officer when I say this.
Sure.
Just in general.
If a officer is suspended for X number of days, they can appeal to the merit board. The merit board can call witnesses and do all those things, get documents, and then they decide whether the chief's decision for suspension was justified or not.
Okay.
Okay.
But how would it be possible if he's on the same board?
Right.
Well, I think the
Would there be a conflict of interest?
well, so yeah, he's not going to be on that board. I think the two more important questions are: how the hell did somebody like that get on the merit board in the first place with that kind of a record? And how is he still on the merit board, at least on paper, after the Breonna Taylor shooting?
Right.
I mean, again, they knew within minutes of getting to that scene that somebody fired recklessly in there. They knew, after one conversation that it was Hankinson. And oh, by the way, they don't even know where the hell Hankinson is for a little while. He should have been gone.
All right, so let's get into that. So let's get into the night of the shooting, from what you know so far.
Sure.
Okay, March 13th, a little bit after midnight, this shooting occurs. I was confused because I've heard the 911 tape. For those who haven't heard the 911 call, it sounds like after officers came in and shot Breonna Taylor, we have Kenneth Walker calling 911 saying that someone just kicked in the door and killed my girlfriend. Now, when I'm listening to this, I'm wondering, well, how is he making this call if LMPD just kicked in the door and fired shots? So obviously officers weren't in the apartment when he was making this call. What do you allege happened after officers kicked in the door and shot Breonna Taylor?
Sure. So let me be clear. I'll try to differentiate between at least what the documents seem to confirm versus what would be the most reasonable thing to deduce. So a lot of people need to realize that this day, and we've been through and through this, but this day really starts on March. Day really actually starts earlier in the week with, with the guy they were after taunting them. So they all of a sudden decided to create this gang-like situation where they hit 5 no-knock warrants in the night. And let's also be clear, that no-knock warrant on Breonna, that's a dirty warrant.
Right.
Okay, that is a dirty warrant.
We'll get into that. Okay, good.
Sure. Let's also understand that it looks like from the documents, Brad, that this night started a lot earlier because I've got EMS staging for this warrant on the cash sheet at about 11:15. So if they're asking for staging at that point, basically what that means to the public is they're asking for an ambulance to be on standby in case something happens. That is not abnormal. That is not something that needs, I remember the first time I saw it, I said, what the hell do they need an ambulance over there for? It's just, that's protocol. But the warrants don't get served until about 12:40 at Glover's place, is what I've got. And then 3 minutes later, they're, beating down Breonna's door and murdering her. That call's at 12:46. The most reasonable thing for me to deduce, Brad, and maybe David will disagree, is that they're confronted with, what Kenneth Walker said was kind of a warning shot to the ground. Mattingly gets hit. They're going to retreat, I would think, while firing. So I do think at that point, maybe they're creating a perimeter. They're retreating. I try to at least, when I be real, I try to paint the light in the best picture to the party that I'm against. I'm assuming that the reason why Kenneth Walker is calling 911 and the police aren't inside, they sure as hell didn't announce themselves because Kenneth Walker did not know who was there.
Right.
And neither did, I think, the 18 neighbors now that we've talked to. But I think at least at that point, they have probably retreated.
Okay.
David, what do you think?
I was thinking the same thing when I first heard the tape. I thought, why am I not hearing things like police, show me your hands, get down on the ground, that kind of thing. I think what Sam says is probably a good assumption.
And a tourniquet's getting put on Mattingly's leg, too. That's going to take some manpower. I'm going to throw something out there, though.
Go ahead.
A lot of these questions that we got, and this right here may be controversial, Brad, but here's the deal. I've heard since day one, these 3 officers were not equipped with body cameras. There were 9 officers that were on that detail that were part of that warrant execution team. The city right now will not say yes or no. I've put this question to them half a dozen times. Which of those other 6 have body cameras on? Who else there have body cameras on? They will not answer that question. And
Okay.
that right there,
Go ahead.
that right there, you want to talk about a lack of transparency. If it comes out in this situation, Brad, which I think it's going to come out, that somebody that was there serving that warrant did have a body camera activated, because the story was always criminal interdiction doesn't have body cameras. Criminal interdiction is a marriage between certain 9th Mobile officers and certain narcotics officers. 9th Mobile was equipped with body cameras. One of the officers that was assigned to this warrant, literally, I have his body camera for another case, and I have multiple citations on search warrants where he is wearing his body camera. So I'm concerned that ultimately there is footage of some of these events. I don't think it was part of the entry team, but I think there's footage that would put a lot of this to bed, and it sucks that we have to sit here and speculate when there's probably a camera out there that shows us what happened.
Okay, so let me go back a little bit. So for those a lot of people don't know how this case actually transpired. So let me tell you what I've heard and what I found through this case. Apparently, there were a couple gentlemen that LMPD were investigating for drug trafficking in West Louisville. I have no issue with that. Apparently, there's been kind of this cat and mouse game. I don't know how long. Some suggest 4 or 5 years, some suggest a couple years, but we know at some point there became a cat and mouse game between these drug suspects and LMPD. At one point, the officers attached some type of cameras to telephone poles close to what is known as a drug house or a trap house where these gentlemen were thought to have operated at. From that point, and let me give a timeline on this. This was January 2020 when these cameras were attached. In January 2020, we had these cameras attached, and they began to surveil some of these suspects. One of these suspects was a friend of Breonna Taylor, a long-term friend.
They dated before.
So they dated in the past.
Yeah.
So they remained friends.
Correct.
Okay, so back in January 2020, physical surveillance was done, and the officers followed the guy she dated previously out to her home. So I guess they have 2 reports of following this guy out to the home of Breonna Taylor's.
We haven't seen
So
it.
they say. So they say in this search warrant affidavit. So they say. When I read the affidavit, I didn't see any information of Breonna Taylor participating in any criminal activity, of them alleging she participated in any criminal activity. They didn't even allege that any criminal activity took place at her house. What they did allege was that on one of the occasions they saw the suspect come out of Breonna Taylor's home with a package that appeared to be a postal package.
That's right.
Okay, so when I read that, I said, okay, so
That's grounds to get a warrant? Come
right.
on, you know.
It's right. That was automatic. So I'm thinking then, from what I know about investigations, if they deem that package contained illegal narcotics or contraband, usually they'll initiate a stop on the vehicle when he leaves, pull it over, or they would do what's called a controlled delivery. They would get with the postal department. The postal department would open up the package, determine it's drugs, deliver it. When someone receives it, then the SWAT team or whoever investigative unit arrest the people on the scene. None of that happened. So in the search warrant affidavit, it says that they allowed the suspect to leave with the package and go back to said trap house. Nothing else occurred from then. This is January. So we have no more interaction on this search warrant between Breonna Taylor and the suspect from January all the way up to March. Mm-hmm. Now, 4 days prior to getting these search warrants, it's alleged that, and this is not in the affidavit, this is alleged, I think, in your lawsuit. I think I heard it at a Metro Council meeting.
Oh, you'll talk. This isn't an allegation. This is true, but yeah,
Okay.
go for it.
So 4 days prior to the search warrant being served on Breonna Taylor, the officers initiated either a warrant or a search at one of the suspect's homes. Apparently, they came up empty-handed. He proceeds to get on social media and taunt the officers, either saying you didn't find anything, it was just practice. Whatever he did, he was taunting them.
Well, officer emoji and a couple middle fingers, too.
Okay, so he do a couple middle fingers. So 4 days later, these officers get 5 no-knock search warrants for residents that they deem this suspect associates with.
Louisville's only 5 no-knocks to that point all year.
The only 5 no-knocks all year. When I looked at a video from a Metro Council meeting, at the time, Conrad was the chief. Conrad couldn't even tell us how many no-knock warrants that they initiate in a year. So the record keeping is poor already. So Conrad said at one point it was 11. At some point it may be up to 22, and this was from 2019. So there's no accurate record keeping on how no-knock search warrants are even executed.
How crazy is that?
Ineffective leadership.
And David James,
I'll tell you what, every time he
leadership.
says that, you know what I'm going to say? Lack of institutional control.
And they're saying ineffective leadership going up to Mayor Fisher.
Lack
So,
of institutional
so,
control.
so we don't know how many no-knock search warrants. We know there's a cap of 22, but there's a number of 11 thrown out there. What we do know is that in 2020, there were only 5 no-knock search warrants. So this is not a common thing. So thousands of search warrants are issued a year, but only at a max 22 no-knocks.
You know how many we got now this year?
6.
6. You know who the 6th one was on?
What was that?
Same dude.
So we have 6 no-knock search warrants, and it's now June. What is this? June 20th? June 20th.
Well,
June
we better
20th.
not have any more now because of Brianna's law.
Right. So up to Breonna's law, up to June, we have 6 no-knock search warrants served by LMPD, and all of them have went to target this particular suspect that was Breonna Taylor's ex-boyfriend.
And who's not Pablo Escobar? He lives in these trap houses. I mean, they are, whatever you want to call these houses. I mean,
So this is a low level. What they think is a low
mid-level
level drug
that they
deal.
treat like is from Colombia.
Okay. Okay. So at this point, 4 days later, they obtained 5 no-knock search warrants. And part of, and I guess this will go back to David James. I don't know what power Metro Council has, but it seems to be pretty common that an officer's word holds a lot of weight. So what typically happens is that an officer puts information on a search warrant affidavit, that's submitted to the court, and the judge pretty much just signs off on it because why would an officer lie? So I'm hoping that protocol is somewhat changed. I did see a policy that now a supervisor has to sign off on search warrants prior
That
to.
was supposed to happen anyways. And
Yep.
Yeah.
I got the NARC manual this week. I'll share it with you. What people don't realize is we see these public policies that are out there, the SOPs, but like David probably knows from back in his day, every department and unit have their own internal policies as well. And when you start seeing these internal policies, you're going to see so many problems. By the way, I think another thing that's important, shouldn't the judges be initialing or signing every page of the warrant? Because do you know that those warrants don't get filed until after execution? So it's highly likely there was I can't remember the officer's name, Mark or something.
Watson.
Mark Watson.
So we'll get into that. Okay, there's so much in
There's so
unpack.
much I like to talk about.
Okay, so 4 days later, after these guys are being taunted with middle fingers on social media, they get these 5 no-knock search warrants. So when I'm reading this, it's looking like this is possible retaliation. This is what it's looking like to me, that he humiliated these guys on social media, or at least he's belligerent them on social media. They go get these warrants. Breonna Taylor's home was one of these warrants.
Yep.
So it was based on the packet, and the language they used in the search warrant was that someone from LMPD contacted the postal inspector here in Louisville, and that package was deemed to be a suspicious package that may have possibly contained drugs.
Total bullshit.
Right. So then we have, after the fact, we have a WDRB investigation that comes out that says no one from LMPD contacted the postal inspector of Louisville. Another agency did, however, contact them, asking about these packages coming from this particular gentleman. It was investigated and deemed that no contraband and no drugs were used. So they used that information in a search warrant to get the warrant, which was incorrect information. And they based it on a 2-month-old surveillance of them just following. So what makes me feel unsafe about that is I have friends, I don't know what they do. I mean, I hope none of my friends do anything illegal. But say we have a friend that may be participating in some criminal activity that we don't know of. And say he happens to just come by my house, hey, Brad, what are you doing, whatever, and leaves. I don't want the standard to be that's enough information to kick in my door at 1 a.m. and stick a gun in my face. So I think the bar has to be higher. So
even with all of that being said, the judge should have not signed that search warrant.
exactly.
So with that being said, shouldn't anybody who seen that search warrant up until it got to the judge be terminated?
You know, I'm not going to go so far. I'll let David talk about that too. I think one thing that's going to come out though is when you're hitting 5 no-knock warrants in a night, I think that it's rotting a little bit higher up, closer to the top than people are talking about, because you got to believe that inside, when it gets around that you're hitting 5 no-knocks in one night.
So you think this goes to the chief and all as possibly up to Mayor Fisher?
No, I don't think that the mayor knows when they're hitting 5 no-knocks. I don't think the chief maybe knows when they're hitting 5 no-knocks, but I think that somebody close to the top certainly knows, hey, we're getting 5 no-knock warrants tonight. Do we even have the staff that are talented enough and
Right.
safe enough to do that? And so the thing is that I think this is rotting a little bit higher than we might want to assume.
So my thing is, if they executing 5 no-knock search warrants, why wouldn't the chief know?
It's a damn good question.
Why? I mean, because
It should be red flags.
I think Conrad seems like a nice guy. I think he's the epitome of willfully ignorant. I think he'd love to not know things.
So we're looking at a Rick Pitino situation where a lot of stuff is going on, but the captain of the ship doesn't know what's going on.
That's right.
What you say, Mr. David James? What's your catchphrase?
Ineffective leadership.
Lack of institutional control.
Okay, so let's go a little further. So we have these 5 search warrants, and I don't think all of them were even executed. So did you know how many they executed? 4. So they executed 4. So at some point in the night, they apprehend the suspect that they
First. Yeah, they get him first.
on first. Okay, so they apprehend the target of the investigation. So he's apprehended. Now, the officers that apprehended him, were they wearing body cameras?
They were wearing body cameras.
Okay.
Several of them. Their own citation shows that they're wearing body cameras, and they were 9th Mobile guys. Because 9th Mobile guys were fitted with body cameras. When they went to criminal interdiction, the rule wasn't just turn them back in; they kept them.
Okay, so they were fitted with body cameras. So from there, they talked to the suspect, and I've heard rumors. I don't know this to be true or not, but I've heard rumors they asked the suspect about Breonna Taylor's home, and he told them that they weren't no longer dating, or there wasn't. He didn't go to her home. Have you confirmed any of that information?
My understanding is that that the suspect, that he was there, that they got him quickly. The body cameras were on until one of the officers there said, all of you need to cut off your body cameras. So body cameras eventually got kicked off. That the suspect, probably is going to confirm that several officers from Springfield got the hell out of Dodge and went over to Elliott. And then some of the ones from Elliott went over to Springfield, which I'm not critical of that.
Okay.
I mean, there's been an officer-involved shooting. But I am critical if all of a sudden folks that were at Springfield start trying to make it look like they were at Elliott. And we got concerns over 1 or 2 in particular that would have been equipped with body camera.
Okay, so let me clear that up a little bit. So we have the suspect at a different location. It's not at Springfield, which is Breonna
That's
Taylor's
correct.
place. So from there, it's determined to go and serve the search warrant at Breonna Taylor's home.
What I would assume is that they're on these, whether they're using narcotics, they got their own little secured radio stations, and they're probably on the narcotics channel, or they're on one of the tactical channels. And so they know at least that the first warrant has been executed. And it sounds like the second one at Springfield, even if it was supposed to be served at the same time, they were on a little bit of a delay because there's this rumor out there that they hit the wrong house. They didn't hit the wrong house, but all their damn documentation said 3007 Springfield on it, so they just wrote it down wrong. So there is documentation that shows they were going to the wrong place, but they hit the right.
Oh, so they actually put the wrong address on the search warrant.
If you look at that whiteboard that Tom Wine put up.
Not on the search warrant. Not on the search warrant.
On the
So I'll go so far as to say this. On the whiteboard, if you look at the whiteboard says 3007. So they're going to do this little briefing before they go serve the warrant. And Tom Wine put it up there. It's got the wrong address on there. It's also got some people that are on there that we can't find on the warrants, and there's some people on the warrants that we can't find on the board, but that's another story.
okay.
The officers, even afterwards, right after the shooting, are reporting, we're at 3007 Springfield, we're at 3007. So all of our CAD reports we got in show the wrong address. We got issues, too, over one of the Josh Jane's documents in particular, and whether or not there may have been a little bit of tampering with that document.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Being that they already had apprehended the suspect, why execute a no-knock warrant at Breonna's?
Let's clear that up. So, because that's a good question, but there's a good answer to it, okay? They were out of their 5 warrants, 4 of them identified 6 targets, so to say, okay? The 5th one only identifies 2 of them plus Breonna. So this warrant was to go through the place and search the premises. They were looking for, at least per their assertion, cash or drugs. So just because they've got the suspect, this wasn't an arrest warrant. This was a search warrant. So just because they had the suspect, theoretically they could go in with this bullshit warrants. They should have never been there to begin with. But on paper, at least, they were allowed to search the place because they were looking for evidence of drugs.
Thinking her house was a stash
Right,
house.
that's what I'm saying. So if they had already had the suspect, why would they can still execute the
Right,
warrant?
they're thinking because he's somewhere else, he may stash drugs at her house.
Right.
So they're going there to look and see if they're
I get
there.
that, but what I'm saying is, if you already have the suspect apprehended, why not just execute a regular search warrant?
Because
Well-
they applied for these earlier in the day. They were already applied for, correct?
Yeah, and here's the deal. Don't forget, afterwards, the immediate story was, well, nobody had even heard no knock. It's we knocked and we announced. Now, I want to make it clear. If you knock and don't announce, that is a no-knock warrant execution. They did not announce, and when you knock, and then you got Breonna Taylor and Kenneth Walker in there screaming, "Who is it?" and you don't respond, that is even more dangerous than just getting to the place and
Right.
slamming the door open, because what you do is you give them time to get scared shitless, get out of the bed, grab your holster and protect your castle. And so what they did was execute the worst form. What they did was the worst form of warrant execution.
Okay. So after this happens, they go to Breonna Taylor's home. They force their way in the home. At some point, it's alleged that they come to the home. They say they knock on the door. Breonna Taylor. They get up and they ask, "Who is it? Who is it? Who is it?" No response. Kenneth is a licensed gun carrier. He grabs his gun. He's protecting his home. I guess when they come in, he starts shooting.
Doesn't start shooting. He shoots once.
Okay, he shoots one time.
So this whole gunfight thing is totally wrong.
Right. So he shoots one time. At that point, from what you have, does it show that officers began shooting at that moment? Did someone shoot when the door was open and the officer was shot? Did the officers behind him start shooting then?
So what we got, at least, is Mattingly's portion of his statement that Tom Wine played.
Okay.
So Mattingly's response to that is, literally, I go in, I look down the hallway, I see a male and a female figure. We got big issues with that. I've been in that apartment. You can't see shit when it's dark. You definitely can't see that it's a male and a female down there. But that aside, he is conceding to firing at least 6 shots, 4 of which he fired inside.
This is Mattingly.
This is Mattingly.
Okay.
2 of which he is saying that he fired as he backed out, and a little bit awkward sequence. Regardless, guy was shot. Mattingly was shot.
He's hitting his leg.
Hitting his leg.
Okay.
Wine says through the wallet, so it says through the wallet into the femoral artery. But anyways, from that point, I got big questions about the letter that Schrader wrote. Now, I'm thrilled that Chief Schrader, went out quickly and hammered Hankison the way he should have. The thing that I'm curious about is the source of his intelligence supporting the 10 shots. Because my understanding is that Hankison emptied a clip, reloaded, and didn't empty the second clip but fired a lot. Either way, we counted 32 when we were there in terms of evidence of 32 gunshots. Wow. So if you got Mattingly with 6, and then you're saying Hankison only fired 10, where the hell did the other 16 come from?
Right.
Are they saying that Cosgrove emptied? If he had one in the chamber, I guess that would have given him 16. Is that right? So, but that's not. We got a lot to learn there. I'd like to know it, but I was curious about that. It's not consistent with what the neighbors say.
Okay, so is it believed that Hankison fired from outside the apartment into the apartment? Meaning that he fired through the bedroom windows, through the back patio door? Is he firing from the doorway or is he firing from the street?
He's definitely firing from outside the windows. So, am I on camera right now?
Yep.
Cool. So let's call this Breonna's apartment, okay? Let's call this the entryway right here. Kind of got a foyer to go into, and then you go in right here. But outside you've got a patio door, you got a window to Janai's room, you got a window to Breonna's room. What we know is that the shots that came through from the outside, at least as Schrader even called them out from Hankison, would have knocked down that patio door and shattered it, which was covered with blinds, by the way, or curtains. And that several of them are going to go all the way through this apartment. Every room in the apartment has gunshots. Pots, pans, backpack, toolbox, bathroom, beds, dressers. It's awful. It's a war zone.
So
and
it's more like an assassination instead of a murder.
Let's put it this way: it was a war zone in there.
So bullets even went through the neighbor's apartment, correct?
Oh yeah, they did.
Okay.
2 neighbors, by the way, 2, okay. And so Hankison we know is going to be out here. Now, what I'm curious about, because of the tone of the letter, is whether or not Hankison was the one, if he's moving down, shooting through these other 2 windows, or through this window right here. I don't think that the second window was shot into. Or if there was another officer, because again, remember that kind of the thing that's being brushed over here is you have a warrant execution team out there, which looks like it was 9. So you would have thought that there would have been some cover already over there, just to show you how reckless, I mean, the intelligence was for this warrant. One of the exigent circumstances that they give is these guys could flee. There's no rear door to this apartment. There's one way in, one way out. Yet on the radio afterwards, they're saying, we don't know if there's an exit. It's like, dude, you got 9 people out there.
Okay, so this is another question a lot of people have. Do we know exactly how many officers were there that night? Because all we hear is Hankinson, Cosgrove, and Mattingly. Were those the only 3 officers at Springfield?
No, so that's what I'm trying to emphasize right here. So maybe I didn't say it clear enough. There's 9 people there from what we got going on. There's 9 officers there, and I don't mean 9 total show up. I mean, when they're going through the door and executing, you've got 9 officers there, right there on the scene, including 2 that we think probably had body camera activated.
Wow.
So when I say I think there's body camera, I think there is body camera that is not part of the entry team.
Right.
But think about it. If you're providing coverage outside that apartment right there, that's clearly some video that's going to show, instead of us speculating as to where Hankinson shot from, we watch it. And I think that there was some there.
Okay, so why are we only seeing 3 officers under investigation when 9 were there? Are the 3 the entry team? Is that what we're looking at?
It's a good question. The initial report was that these 3 were the ones that discharged their weapons. And I think that all of a sudden the narrative became, these are the 3 officers that should be investigated. The reality is that the shooting is what is being investigated, the circumstances leading up to it and the circumstances afterwards. They're keeping it close to their chest, so we're not hearing about other officers, but we shouldn't be ruling out that other officers may have been, complicit, may have been involved in this somehow. Like, Josh James, why wasn't he fired yesterday? I mean, we talk about easy things. Brett Hankinson, easy. Josh James, we know you lied in a warrant and that you guys never should have been there in the damn first place.
So Josh James is the one that actually filed the first one. Is that what we're speaking of?
He's the one who had all 5 written up and tendered over to Judge Mary Shaw.
Is that who resigned?
No, he's just being reassigned.
Okay.
He's just being reassigned. Okay, so for those who missed
Resigned and reassigned sound so much like each other. They're so different.
So for those who missed the live feed earlier, let me go back to Metro Council President David James. So David James, again, can you explain to people at this point the contract between FOP and LMPD states that if an officer is fired while he's under investigation, if an officer is fired and he doesn't get due process, that officer is able to appeal. He has appeal rights for wrongful termination. Now, the narrative out there is that these officers cannot be fired, and if they are fired, that they will receive these $1 million settlements and that they can't be prosecuted criminally. Is that the case?
No. So, just to be clear, the city is sued regularly for wrongful termination. The city regularly has labor grievances filed against it because it willfully violates labor contracts. So what would most likely happen if a officer was fired outside of the contract? They would file to get their job back to the merit board. The merit board would say yes or no. If they said no, you don't get your job back, they would then appeal that to the circuit court. And then if the circuit court said yes or no, there we are. So let's just say hypothetically the circuit court says yes, you get your job back. Then they get their back pay.
So they don't get these $1 million settlements, they just get their back pay from the time they missed while they were fired.
That's correct.
So for you, the in effect, we all see chaos surrounding this case.
Right.
For you, this goes all the way up to the top. So you're saying ineffective leadership, meaning Mayor Fisher.
Right. I mean, it's 3 years ago, Metro Council voted and that we should get rid of Chief Conrad. We said he's ineffective leadership.
So 95% police, right?
Yeah. Have no confidence in him whatsoever to lead the police department. And the mayor refused to do that.
Okay.
So here we are.
So now he's reaping the I don't want to say a war of rewards, but he's reaping the consequences behind refusing to fire a chief that was problematic.
Reap what you sow, isn't that what they say? I'm horrible at those things. But.
So again, why do we hear, well, you don't know why we hear, but we constantly hear Mayor Fisher saying that I can't fire these officers by 67C, and that is incorrect.
He can fire who he needs to fire. no matter who that is. And they have recourse to try and get their job back.
And let's be clear. I think Mayor Fisher cannot actually fire an officer, but he can direct his chief to fire an officer, correct?
Brad, I'm going to tell you what happened there, okay?
Go ahead.
So here's the deal. I know that we're running short on time. Here's the deal. Again, kind of this theme of woefully ignorant, all right? So until this week, they've been playing this game over the city and the administration saying, hey, this PIU file, we can't even get a copy of it. We sent it to the AG's office and they won't let us look at it. So I reach out to the AG's office and they say, city's a custodian of that file. They can look at it. Mayor's got possession of it. And, oh, by the way, we'd like for them to not release some of it because it could compromise the investigation. But it's their file. They can do what they want with it. So then finally, I actually kind of called them out on it. And then all of a sudden, magically, oh, we're looking at the PIU file. We're looking at it. And I think that what happened is that finally, instead of pleading willful ignorance, the chief and the mayor looked at the PIU file for the first time. So until that point, they could say, we don't have grounds to terminate because we haven't seen the file, so we don't really know what they did. Well, lo and behold, Schrader looks at the file and within 2 days has enough. So what the mayor needs to do in the future is, instead of kind of turning his head the other way, he needs to get in there and say, give me all the facts, I need to look at it, and I need to make a determination now. Instead of just saying, oh, let's wait.
Now look, is it your what do you believe? Let's say this. And these are not facts. But do you believe that the LMPD is not providing all the documents and files to the Attorney General in a timely manner?
I think that they didn't do the investigation in a timely manner, and I think the reason why is because they did a one-sided, half-assed investigation, and then all of a sudden the feds get in, the AG get in, and they say, you didn't do this, you need to do that, you need to do this. So I actually am confident right now, with these three agencies combined, that the investigation is going to show a lot.
A lot meaning negligence or wrongdoing by LMPD and then negligence on the higher
cover-ups.
Come on, I think it's going to show cover-up. I think it's going to show cover-up way up, right and close to the top. And I have serious suspicions about some dude leaving the scene of a shooting and going AWOL for 2 to 3 hours. Don't get me wrong, Steve Shoring's a good lawyer. I respect him. He's got ethics. He's got integrity. And he's come out and said that Hankison went straight to the hospital. He was worried that Mattingly was, maybe not even alive. If that's it, I'll get on the show and say I was wrong. But I think Brett Hankison was doing something else.
Okay, look, we have to end this show for now, but we're going to stay here. We're going to stay here on the live feed because I have a few other questions I want to ask you. We got a few minutes that we can spend in here. So we're going to log off now on air. Thank you for tuning in to Urban Voices Radio. Catch us every Saturday afternoon at 106.3 FM or catch us on kyheartmedia.com. Urban Voices Radio, we thank you for tuning in with you. And we are out of here, people.
So how do we get rid of the, what's the procedure about the FOP as far as their leadership?
I mean, because so the FOP is like the Teamsters, like ASME, like UAW. You don't have any choice in that.
Okay.
You can't get rid of the FOP, and frankly, I'm pro-labor union. I just think that one of the things that's wrong with an FOP system is that the legislature then ends up incorporating a lot of the FOP contract into the legislature, so basically it becomes law. And to me, the whole essence of bargaining is, we got a contract, and you know what? When it's done, let's get back to the table, let's get new terms, but all of a sudden when you go to the legislature and make it binding law, then it makes it a hell of a lot harder to change.
All right, look, let's get into the nitty-gritty. And you can, we're not on air, so we don't have to worry about an FCC violation, but you can feel free to say whatever you need to say here. You feel, if you cuss, whatever. Okay, but from here, you said the search warrant for Breonna Taylor's apartment in particular, you feel was an unjustified search warrant.
I think it's dirty.
It's a dirty warrant. Explain what you mean by a dirty warrant.
So I think that, again, there was an ulterior motive behind it. I think it was certainly more than Josh James. I think that you got a lot of that, unfortunately, that unit getting together and deciding that Josh James is going to be the one who submits the warrant. But obviously, he didn't just wake up that day and say, we're going to hit 5 houses.
Right. So
Two people didn't wake up that day and say, we're going to hit 5 houses.
How does that, explain to me how that works. So Josh James is the one that actually files the actual warrant, right?
He's known as the affiant.
The affiant? And what does that mean in layman terms?
That's an affidavit.
So in a search warrant, you have the search warrant document, and then you have the search warrant affidavit.
Okay.
The search warrant affidavit lists all the reasons that you believe this search warrant should be executed.
Okay.
That is filled out by the affiant. And so in this case, Josh.
Okay.
And so, like one of the things that Sam was talking about, that search warrant wasn't last updated until January 21st.
Right.
Case law says that within 48 to 72 hours prior to that search warrant being signed, it should be updated.
Better have fresh evidence.
Yeah, fresh evidence.
So 72 hours, there should be fresh evidence to justify the warrant.
Right.
So we're talking about 2-month-old evidence.
Right.
For example, if I went, if today all of a sudden I go up to your place and, I'm a confidential informant and I see that you're selling all kinds of coke and heroin and all this stuff, and then I go back to, my undercover cop or my plainclothes cop and say, hey, this is what he's doing in here. That guy can't then wait 2 months to take out a search warrant to go at your place.
And that's what happened in this case.
At best, that's what
Okay.
happened in this case. At worst, they just made up stuff.
Okay. Now, here's my thing. I'm wondering, once a search warrant is executed, is there a possibility for these officers to start entering information on these pages after the warrant was executed?
Yes, that's my problem with the way the system works right now. So the problem I've got is that the way it works right now is that there are certain, I think that there's 4 copies of the search warrant. So one's going to go to I think Dennis Sims over in the legal office or something. One's going to be left with the judge if the judge wants to keep it. And then circuit court clerk does not get theirs until after it is served. And that is where the problem lies, Brad, is that if I go get a warrant today, granted, I can't give it to the circuit court clerk today because otherwise somebody monitoring warrants is going to say, hey, dude, they're about to hit your house.
Right.
But there should be a mechanism to where it's filed under seal and unsealed
After the
it's served.
execution.
Because think about it, it's crazy. If the judge doesn't want her copy of the warrant, if I've got a guy in LMPD who's overworked and doesn't really look and says, just give it to me when you give it to me, then I can get a judge to sign a warrant. She hasn't initialed all the pages. You can change whatever you want to change, and I'm not saying it happens. I'm just saying it shouldn't be susceptible to it
But
happening.
someone can change it. And
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
she wouldn't even know what's in or remember what's even in it because she hasn't actually looked at it, correct?
Correct. Well, no, I'm not going to go and say that. I will put on record, at least, that my dealings with Mary Shaw over the years, Judge Shaw, she has been ethical. She has been a good judge. It's been a joy to be in her courtroom. I think she messed up big time here. I think she probably feels really bad about it. But frankly, I'm also not going to sit here and throw her under the bus like some people are until it comes out whether or not she actually signed the warrant that Josh Janes filed.
So at this point, we don't even know if she actually signed it because
we
we're
know
not
that
giving.
she signed something.
Right.
Right, but we don't know exactly what she signed.
Right.
I'm just saying. I'm saying based on I'm not going to jump to conclusions yet that bash her because, from my understanding and my dealings with her, she's a good woman and a good judge.
Right. I've heard that.
So,
If you're watching this video, please share this video.
Now, but with the councilman, how do we go forward to change the culture of the police department now?
I think, we've started with getting a new police chief search, but I think it requires much more than that. I think my personal thought is you have to clean out everybody at the top.
Yes.
Including Mayor Fisher.
Well, I'm talking about the police department.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
You're trying to get real bad, man. Come on.
You have to clean out everybody at the top and bring in somebody that's going to be a change agent, and that they know that they're there for a short period of time to create change, and they're not trying to make friends. They're not trying to create buddies. I think also the work going on with the Civilian Review Board and the Office of Inspector General is extremely important. I think those things combined together will start to create the cultural change that needs to take place within the Louisville Metro Police Department.
Brad, let me give you a couple there too.
Good.
So come in, clean house, get rid of some of these units that are ineffective. Pay your good officers more money.
Yep.
Okay? If you have, right now, I've got 35 people working for me. I don't know how the hell you run a police department. Kudos to whoever can come in and do it. You know what? If I didn't have 35 rock stars, I would need 55 people. But my 35 can do what 55 can do, and in return, I make sure that they'll never leave. I want them to love where they work. I want them to get paid what they deserve. And right now, you have to take care of these officers. But I also think You got to put officers in the communities they live in, or strongly encourage it and incentivize them to live there. If I grew up and I live in the 6th Division, you should be putting me to patrol the 6th Division. That is my community. If I live in Taylorsville, Kentucky, and I have never, even gone past 9th Street, and I'm out of, and I'm fresh on the force, you should not be sticking me in the 1st, 2nd, or 4th Division. And frankly, if I ask to go into the 1st, 2nd, or 4th Division, that should be a red flag because it means I want action.
Right.
But you got to incentivize these people to go into the communities.
If we don't pay police officers well, which we haven't for quite some time, you end up with the New Orleans incident, right? So New Orleans was the most corrupt police department in the country, where police are taking bribes to look the other way, taking bribes to do bad things to people. And so we have police officers that have 20 years of service on our police department that make less than a Shiveley police officer with 4 years on.
That's crazy.
We have police officers that are paying $900 a month for health insurance costs when they're only making $1,300 a month.
That's crazy.
That's crazy.
Okay, so my other question is this.
Oh, and drug and alcohol testing too.
Right, exactly.
We have an ordinance we're introducing on that on Monday.
Okay.
So any police officer, any sworn officer for Louisville Metro government that is involved in any critical incident, our proposal is that they immediately be tested for drugs and alcohol.
Boom.
Okay. So, look, and this hurts me personally, right?
I want to give David a hug for that right now.
But it hurts me personally because for so long I've considered Mayor Fisher an ally, and me and Mayor we weren't friends, but we were a little more than cordial. I mean, he was a good guy. I could reach out to him, and
I hear he's a good guy.
I think he's a good guy as a person, right?
Right.
But on this, well, not just this, but on a few other things, but on this particular case here, we're at odds on it, and I've let him know we're at odds on it. And we were on a panel a few months ago, and I think for the first time in life I pissed him off. But he got pissed off on the panel, and I asked him. I said, "Look, if Breonna Taylor wouldn't have went national in the media, would this case have been swept under the rug?"
Yes.
Because we're looking at this happened March 13th, and it's now May. At the time, it was May, and I'm like, you just 5 days ago you approved for the feds to step in, and I'm like, that didn't sit well with me. So I expected him to say, "Well, no, Brad. Regardless, this case would have been swept on the rug." Period. He sat there and said, "Well, we don't know what would have happened.
Political correct.
We don't know what would have happened." If you go back and watch that video, he says, "Well, of course we can't go back. We would hope to think that it wouldn't have been swept under the rug." And I'm like, "What?" So from that point on, it gave me the inkling that coronavirus was happening. Everybody was focused on coronavirus, and if they could have swept this under the rug, that's what they were going to do.
This man right here is the one that called out 3 years ago the whole model that was it'll blow over. And unfortunately, I'm with you. I hear he's a nice guy. Now,
He won't return my calls now.
Mayor and I have never been allies, but because I sue the city.
Right.
But at the same time, the mantra has always been it'll blow over. And you're seeing it here. You saw it in other officer-involved shootings. You saw it on Youth Explorer, and you continue to see it on Youth Explorer today. When's the last time you heard anything about Youth Explorer?
Right.
When's the last time you heard the executive branch talk about how horrible that we have as many murders and shootings we have going on? When's the last time?
Well, we also have what I've been researching now. We've had this huge overtime scheme that's been going on. So when I looked up the
when
pay,
did you hear that last get talked about?
it doesn't.
When the council talked about it.
Right. So I actually looked up all the three officers. I looked up their earnings. Last year, each of them made one of them made 77. I think it was Cosgrove, but the other two made like 120 grand.
Well, it's because 2 years ago, the council, no offense, kind of, and I'm going to go so far to say not recklessly, but they basically went to the police and said, "We're going to give you money for overtime."
Okay.
And council did the right thing, but there was no oversight.
Right.
So the problem
Ineffective leadership.
Ineffective leadership.
So the money went quickly, and Brett Hankison during that year got paid $128,000 while working off duty security detail each weekend with a base salary of $59,000.
Right.
Now,
so he's doubling his salary.
Oh yeah. Now one thing that hasn't been addressed enough either in terms of a new chief and a police model is we're on what's called a comp stat model. You ever heard of comp stat? So when you get to big cities, really, really big cities, a lot of it is driven by metrics. And a long time ago, it was because the more arrests you had, the more guns you confiscated, the more drugs you confiscated, the more federal money you got to supplement your state money. So if you're telling a cop today, you have to meet these numbers, you have to exceed this threshold, confiscate this many drugs, confiscate this many weapons, and that is how we're judging your performance, and that is what's going to, dictate where you go in this department, how much you get paid.
So it's like an incentive program.
It's an incentive program to go out, and what happens is you got search warrants being requested because you smell pot outside the house. You've got cars being pulled over because, people, places, narcotics. You remember that program? To me, it means black, poor neighborhood, and you look like a drug dealer. And you got guns, being confiscated and everything else to meet numbers. And to me, that model has to go.
Ineffective leadership.
Well, I got to keep ineffective leadership meaning all the way up to the top.
All the way to the top.
All the way up to Mayor Fisher.
Those complaints were given to.
Stop putting him on the spot. Like
I'm
that.
putting Fisher. Look, listen.
He just mad because he ain't coming back on the show.
No, because when I started looking at these things and I'm looking at, I watch Mayor Fisher go on television and I watch him try to spin this, and when I say we, I'm talking about the city of Louisville. We look crazy out here because you have Minneapolis moving in 1 or 2 days. You have Atlanta moving in 1 or 2 days.
Buffalo.
We're almost 100 days in, and we finally get one of the officers fired, but we're still moving slowly. And then when I look at your case, that information is being funneled to you have to sue for information. Information is not willingly being passed over, and Mayor Fisher's getting up here with a happy face and a good tone of voice, and he's trying to assure the community that this is not on me, that my hands are tied, there's nothing I can do, and that's the farthest thing from the truth. So it's pissing me off that he's hiding behind a policy that he's kind of playing semantics with this policy is what he's doing.
You and I are fat guys, we like the truth.
Right.
And we go ahead.
No. So one of our ordinances we're introducing on Monday also says that 911 tapes, body cameras, CAD reports from MetroSafe can no longer be hidden behind the guise of under investigation. That they have 60 days to get it done. After that, those things become public documents because any other day of the week, those are public documents.
Okay, now this is a question I had. I'm not clear on this. There is allegedly this policy that after 90 days, if an officer is accused of if an officer has an accusation after 90 days, the chief doesn't move on this administratively, then it's no longer part of the permanent file. My question is, would that pertain to the Breonna Taylor case as well? If they wouldn't have moved on this in 90 days, will we be missing information on Hankinson and the other 3 officers?
Yeah, so let me clear that up a little bit. So
Okay.
So basically, you got your professional integrity unit that's looking at the criminal thing, and then typically the way LMPD works is they will open up professional standards or IA after PIU is done. A citizen complaint comes in, like Brett Hankinson, sexual assault claims. A woman comes forward, reaches out, and says, "Hey, listen, I need to make a complaint." Once that makes it to the chief's desk, if he does not do anything or open up a formal complaint within 90 days, per the FOP contract, it is destroyed. It does not make it into your personnel file. That's crazy.
Yeah,
that's bullshit. I mean, I didn't realize when I was cursing her. I told you, man, I got a bad mouth.
You're good here. We're not on here.
But I don't want you to get in trouble for earlier. My bad.
No, you're good.
I don't think too many people care about bullshit.
but that is problematic. So
that's ridiculous. I mean, think about it. If somebody files a complaint against you today,
yeah,
that needs to be part of your file. It needs to stay there. These are police officers. You need to look at pattern and practices. You need to be able. LMPD, let me tell you something. If you look today, they flaunted this early action warning system that they said they were putting into place like 5 years ago, which is supposed to identify red flags. When we took Chief Conrad's deposition a couple of years ago, and I don't know if this has changed, he candidly admitted, yeah, it's in the policy. We never actually got that to work.
You're kidding me. What?
I'll send you the deposition.
I got a question real quick.
And we gotta get out of here after that.
The first, 4th, and 3rd Amendment rights for protesters. Should these charges get dropped for them protesting?
I guess I can't really defer to David. I'm the law guy here.
Yeah.
So, in terms of anybody that is engaging in free speech that is taking up public space, or I don't think any of these charges sticking. Let's put it that way. I think that obviously you can't go down, you can't loot,
Right.
you can't engage in assault or battery. But and if LMPD actually wears the body cameras, we should be able to see what actually took place.
Right. Now, before we leave, let me ask you this, because I'm pretty confident, and I get that the public is not, because we've seen
I'm
officers
confident.
being investigated and nothing comes of that, right? From going over the information in this case, I'm pretty confident that not only the Attorney General, that the FBI, I believe the FBI is going to totally dismantle LMPD after this investigation.
I'm pretty confident in the feds right now. Let me say this: I'm not as confident. I think the AG's office certainly. After that letter from Chief Schrader yesterday,
Okay.
the AG's office cannot not charge Brett Hankison.
Right.
Literally, the LMPD's own investigation concluded that he engaged in criminal conduct.
Okay.
I am confident in the feds and how seriously they're taking this investigation, how seriously they are wanting to make sure that anybody and everybody is held accountable as it relates, in particular the narcotics department and criminal interdiction. The problem is that you got to remember, feds have 99% conviction rate. They love to flaunt that 99% conviction rate. They're not going to slap hardcore charges that they can't substantiate. But at the end of the day, if they can get rid of a dirty department or expose it, or at least educate us as to why this is isolated, I'm cool with that, because ultimately, just charging a couple officers without exposing the root cause of this big problem, that's not going to promote change. But if the feds can come in and really do something to dismantle that department in particular,
And we saw that in Ferguson.
I'd be pretty happy.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm pretty confident.
I am too.
I'm pretty confident. I think there's a lot of dirt being covered up here, attempted to be covered up here. So I'm pretty confident. Look, I want to let you people know we have to get out of here. Look, and I'm going to say this personally. This is not him promoting an ad. Sam is a bulldog. Hey, look, me and Sam text quite frequently or whatever.
We do.
Sam is on this. It's like he's obsessed. Morning, noon, and night. This case is eating him up, and Sam is a bulldog, and he's not. I'm confident that Sam is not going to Sam can't charge anyone criminally. He's a civil attorney. But as far as discovering evidence or being on this case, Sam is just not going to let this ride. So
He's on a mission.
Yeah, he's on a
Get it
mission.
right.
Yeah,
There's a tipping point, Brad.
yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So we got to get out of here. People, before you get out of here, make sure you share this video, please. Well, I'm sure we'll get them back up here as this case progresses. But I'm an advocate. Look, and people know now I'm an advocate of, and this hurts because I've been a loose friend or supporter of Mayor Fisher, but I'm now an advocate that Mayor Fisher either resigns or somehow, I don't know, the process removed from office. And not because I think he's a bad person. I think you can be a good person that wants to do well. You're just not capable of doing the job. I don't think at this point Mayor Fisher is capable of doing a great job at being mayor of City of Louisville. I do not. I don't think he can save this.
We got time or are we done? I can say something in response.
Go ahead, real quick. Go ahead.
Let's put it this way. If we get information from the feds or the AG's office that show a more widespread cover-up, corrupt problem that the mayor should have known about and didn't tell us, that's the last straw for me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of these things where, he has said too many times on TV, I want the truth just as much as y'all do, and if he's known it and not told us, that's enough for me.
Yeah.
And I'll say this, I'm so tired every single speech he gets of him spending the first 2 minutes flaunting about all of his great work. I don't even know what the Synergy Project does. I don't know about any of these other studies. I don't care that he required body camera because he couldn't get them to wear them. And I don't care about all these other things. I respect people that will get up, speak the truth. Tell me that when you made a mistake, I'll tell you when I made a mistake. And I'm a pretty forgiving person, but don't sit there and tell me how great a job you've done when we're sitting here in the middle of this crisis.
Exactly. I want to thank Metro Council President David James for coming in. I want to thank Sam Aguilar, which is one of the attorneys representing the family of Breonna Taylor. I'm going to try. Look, I'm going to put Sam on the spot when he's up here now. I'm going to try for you guys one of these days to hopefully get Benjamin Crump up here. I don't know if I can do that, but if Crump comes in town, I'm trying to get Crump up in here. So you hear me put my request out here while Sam is in the studio.
We are going to get Crump on here.
You heard it?
Word on that.
We're going to get Crump on here. All right, people, so thank you for tuning in. Before you leave, please share the video. Again, both of these gentlemen are doing great jobs for the city of Louisville. They both have spoke pretty candidly today, so that's a great thing. But Sam is a bulldog in his own right. David James is a bulldog as well, people. So you have it. They're here. Shoot me some questions if you want me to ask them anything in the future, and thank you for tuning in.